job.
Nine a winner. Got a hot hand. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Nine a winner. Got a hot hand. Who wants to come? Six to point. Who wants to come? Six to point. Who wants to come? Six to point.
Ladies, gentlemen, swords and shields of all ages, it is a big time of exploration, testing, and research in the Monster Hunter community. There was tons of equipment added to the game with Title Update 4, more equipment added in the Illuminhim Festival a couple of days afterwards, and then even more equipment now with Arch-Tempered Jin Dahaad. And that's not even considering the weapon and skill changes from the patch notes themselves too. Last week we covered the best builds for sword and shield right out of the gate into Title Update 4, but since then, the new equipment that we've had at this point has improved some of those builds, and the Scorcher set bonus is seeming to be much more relevant than we initially expected as well after the changes it received in the patch. That said, today we're going to go over a new set of best builds for sword and shield. Some of these will just be improved versions of what we went over last week, but we also have builds with Scorcher in them now, and we'll talk about how they compare and when you should or should not use them instead. But we also have, for both of these set build archetypes, a new level of full RNG for people who have God Roll Talismans so perfect that they also have the full decoration slot capability on them too, as there are some builds that are only possible to use if you have those. So today we've got the new best fully crafted build, which does use Scorcher now. We have a version of that upgraded for if you have a God Roll Talisman but do not have set or group bonus roll on your weapon. We have a build for both with and without God Roll Talismans, but with the Gogma weapon RNG factored in, so the set and group bonus from your weapon. And we have a build that requires the literal pinnacle of RNG possible right now. Then we'll have some higher RNG versions of the Scorcher builds at the end as well, so a big build collection today. There's like 8 builds we're going over. Starting off then, before we get into everything, to talk about Scorcher a little bit first, as it's in a lot of the stuff here. This skill was changed in Title Update 4 to proc more frequently and do more damage when it does, as well as changing a decent portion of it to be fixed damage instead of being dependent entirely on elemental hit zones, to put it in the simplest way possible of explaining the changes. This skill has a chance to proc bonus damage when you hit a monster. This chance can only happen once every 2.5 seconds. If you fail that chance twice in a row, the third chance will always succeed. This means on average you will get a proc once every 5 seconds as long as you are consistently hitting the monster. Sword and shield is possibly the best weapon in the game for keeping this consistent sort of rhythm, and so it is about as close as you can get to maximizing the benefit from Scorcher, which is why Scorcher is uniquely a little bit better for sword and shield than pretty much anything else. As for when you would use Scorcher versus when you would use the builds that don't have it, for our initial builds it's just straight up better full stop, which is why I'm only recommending crafted Scorcher builds now. I'm no longer presenting the crafted builds without them, because the effective raw between them is so close that Scorcher is just going to be better in pretty much every situation. For the builds that we have later on in the video though, that have a lot more RNG involved, it's basically dependent on your hunt length. It's not the simplest thing to quantify because of how Scorcher works, but I would say generally, if a hunt is around 10 minutes or longer, the Scorcher builds will be better, and the longer the hunt goes past that, the more better they become. So the slower a hunter you are, the better Scorcher is. If your average hunt is fast, Scorcher's not great. If your average hunt is slow, Scorcher is much better. And the last thing that I want to say about that is that obviously the hunts that go longer are usually the ones that you will find more challenging, and so that tips it a little bit towards Scorcher in my opinion, because the only times that you really need to min-max, unless you're trying to efficiently grind Chotacabra, is for the difficult monsters. But because it is this close and there is situational uses for both versions of these archetypes and the considerations are this tight between them, I'll be showing you all of the different builds so you can make your own choices on what you want to use from that. Moving on then, we've got our weapons themselves, and the best ones by far are of course the Gogma Artian weapons. For the focus when upgrading these, attack and element focus are nearly identical in value, with element focus pulling slightly ahead if you are correctly element matching your target's weaknesses, and attack focus being notably ahead if you aren't going to do that. That means if you are willing to put together a Gogma Artian weapon for every single element and are able to do so with all of the correct RNG, set bonus, and group bonus rolls on them, then element focus is technically a little bit better. But I am making the assumption that most people would be happy to have one perfectly rolled weapon, and so I'll be doing all of the build math assuming attack focus as a result. That said, dragon element is the one that you'd want to choose if you're only going to make one of these. Otherwise, again, having one of each element is the ideal thing that you could do. For reinforcements then, attack boost EX, attack boost EX, attack boost 3, attack boost 3, and then sharpness boost EX is the ideal set of rolls. Having one affinity boost instead of one of the attack boost 3s isn't a big loss, but it is a little bit worse, and also having a second sharpness boost instead of one of the attack 3s isn't a massive loss either, because it would mean that you could drop our sharpness skill, but this is the version of the weapon that leads to the peak potential in builds, and this is the version that I will be mathing around. For the set bonus and group bonus then, this is actually identical for every build that we have today that makes use of these, and it's the gore magala set bonus for the massive affinity that you get from that whole situation combined with antivirus, and then the Lord Soul group bonus, which is 5% bonus weapon attack until you trigger the guts portion of the effect. Then just to cover it here, as it's the same thing in all the builds, for weapon decorations we have a priority order. Offensive guard rank 3 is the most important weapon skill for us, whether you get that from decorations or from a talisman in the RNG talisman versions of the builds. Next priority is Master's Touch. Sharpness management is extremely important for Sword and Shield. You really do need it to be able to play comfortably. Then depending on whether it's a crafted talisman build or an RNG talisman build, you can either get critical boost 3 or critical boost 5 if it's an RNG talisman setup, and that is the ideal combination of weapon skills for this weapon that we can get in any of these builds today. Moving on then, let's get into our first build, and we'll start with the one that requires no RNG at all. The armor for this one is Raidao Gamma Helmet and Waist, New Udra Gamma Chest Piece, and then Guardian Rathalos Beta Gloves and regular Rathalos Beta Legs, both of those transcended for the extra decoration space of course. This gets us the Raidao 2-set bonus for extra latent power duration, it gets us the Scorcher 2-set bonus, and it also gets us the Lord Soul group bonus as well. The talisman for this build is the Latent Power Charm, which is 3 ranks of latent power, nice and simple. For the decorations in this, aside from the weapon ones, which we already talked about earlier in the weapon section, we have 2 Challenger Jewels for a little bit of agitator, 3 Tenderizer Jewels to get weakness exploit up to 5 ranks, and then a Chain Jewel for 1 rank of burst, and a Counter Jewel to finish counterstrike up to rank 3. We then have 2 remaining 1-slot sockets for you to use for utility, in which my main recommendation is Divine Blessing. You could use Constitution for a little bit more maximum might uptime, but that gets overwritten by the stamina cost reduction of latent power when that's active, so I personally value the extra survivability a little bit more. Full skill list then is 3 critical boost, 3 offensive guard, 1 handicraft for my combo decoration that I'm using here, Master's Touch, 5 weakness exploit, 5 latent power, 3 counterstrike, 3 maximum might, 2 agitator, 2 evade window as a bonus, 1 burst, 1 stamina surge as a bonus, and then Rathalos 2-set bonus, Raidao 2-set bonus, and the Lord Soul group bonus as well. For the math on this one, we will go pretty in depth so you can see my process, but then we'll condense it down and make it quick for every build thereafter. 257 attack on the weapon itself with attack focus and perfect reinforcements. We then get an extra 15% from offensive guard 3 being consistently active. We get another 5% of our base attack from Lord Soul, and it's important to mention that these percent bonuses do not stack with each other, they do not include each other, they both scale from that base 257 on the weapon. This puts us at 308.4 attack. We gain an extra 5.2 attack from agitator rank 2, which we are counting at 65% uptime. Add on an extra 12.5 for counterstrike level 3, counted at 50% uptime. For 50% uptime to be realistic for this, you would need to get hit by the monster once every 90 seconds. The best replacements for counterstrike in most situations are the equivalent of around 8 attack, meaning that counterstrike is always better unless you are good enough at avoiding being hit that you only get hit once every like 2.5 to 3 minutes. If you think you are hit at least that often, then counterstrike is worth having in the build, and I think the vast majority of players that aren't like speedrunners are hit often enough to make that worth it, even with perfect guard being so accessible on Sword and Shield, which is why I'm counting it at 50% uptime for math purposes. We then add on another 8 attack from burst rank 1, which we should have the full 5-hit bonus active for the majority of the time, and that puts us to 334.1 attack, which is quite nice. For our affinity, negative 10% on the weapon as a base, we gain 30% from weakness exploit 5, we get another 33% from latent power rank 5, which we're counting at 66% uptime. We do that because we have the Raidao 2-set bonus. If you don't have the Raidao 2-set bonus, we only count latent power at around 50% uptime, which would be the minimum possible with how the skill works, just so that you understand why it will have different uptimes in different builds here. We then get another 30% affinity from maximum might rank 3, and then 3.25% affinity for 2 ranks of agitator at 65% uptime, for a total affinity of 86.25%. This build has 3 critical boost in it, so a critical hit is 34% more damage than a non-critical hit. 86.25% chance of 34% damage increase is an average damage bonus of 29.33%. Apply that to our attack number and you get 432.07. Increase that by a further 32% to account for the white sharpness damage modifier, and it goes up to 570.3 effective raw. In comparison, the best full crafted build that we did before this at the start of Title Update 4 was 577.3 effective raw, which is a higher number, but this new one has Scorcher 2 set, which, well, hard to give a specific value to, is absolutely worth more than 7 effective raw, so this new build is better without a doubt. Our second build today is basically the same thing as the first one, but with a god roll talisman included, so it's the same armor pieces, the same set bonuses that we get as well, and mostly the same skills too, the main difference being the talisman itself, which should be either 3 offensive guard or master's touch for the first skill, and then weakness exploit or burst or latent power for the second skill slot, and it should be a rarity 8 talisman as well. For most hunts, attack boost decoration or 1 critical eye in the weapon socket, but for anything that has unblockable attacks, or if you expect chip damage from guarding, 1 rank of the guard up skill is a very solid use of this slot instead, and it is worth being aware of. The full skill list for this one then is on screen now. Basically the difference from the first build is we get 2 more ranks of crit boost and 1 rank of attack boost at the cost of 2 ranks of agitator. For the math on this one then, 257 attack on the weapon itself, up to 308.4 after adding on our percent increases. Put the flat bonuses on top and we hit 331.9 attack. For affinity, negative 10% on the weapon as a base, increased to an average affinity of 83% due to our skills. We have 5 ranks of critical boost, so 83% chance of triggering that bonus is an average damage increase of 33.2%. Apply that to our total attack and we get 442.09, increase that by a further 32% for the white sharpness damage modifier, and we get a final effective raw of 583.6. So a pretty decent upgrade from the talisman in this one, being around 2.3% higher effective raw than our fully crafted build. Next up, let's get into the builds that don't have Scorcher on them, and these are the ones that will have the highest effective raw numbers as a result. First up, let's start with the one that requires set and group bonus from your weapon, but uses a crafted talisman instead of an RNG talisman, and this is our highest effective raw build without requiring some sort of RNG talisman. The armor for this build is the Analytic Eye Helmet, the Jin Dahaad Gamma Chest, the Raydao Beta Gloves, Raydao Gamma Waist, and Gore Magala Beta Legs. Then we have the Challenger Charm on it for 3 ranks of agitator. For the decorations in this one, 1 mighty jewel to cap off maximum might, 3 counter jewels to get full ranks of counterstrike, 1 throttle jewel to finish off latent power to the full 5 ranks, and then 1 chain jewel for 1 rank of burst as well. 2 sane jewels, as this is our first build that uses the Gore Magala set bonus, so we need full antivirus to make proper use of this. The full skill list is on screen here, and we do now get the Raydao 2 set bonus, Gore Magala 2 set bonus, and the Lord Soul group bonus, which is quite a tasty combination in general. Blasting through the math on this one then, 257 attack on the weapon itself, boosted up to 308.4 from our percent bonuses. Then add on our flat attack increasing skills to get 341.9. For affinity, negative 10% on the weapon, and with our affinity skills added on, we hit an average of 97.75%. That means that we do overcap on affinity when everything is active together, but the setup probably has the highest sharpness retention through Master's Touch because of this. This build then has 3 critical boost, which is a 34% increase on critical hits, so 97.75% chance of that is an average bonus of 33.24%. Apply that to our total attack and you get 455.53, increased by a further 32% for the white sharpness modifier, and you get 601.3 effective raw, again without even having talisman RNG as a factor for this. Next up, let's go over our next stage of the build then, which is one that requires set and group bonus for your weapon and an RNG talisman, but slightly less strict requirements than the one that will be following it after. The armor for this then is the Jin Dahaad Beta Helmet, as well as the Jin Dahaad Gamma Chest Piece, the Raydao Beta Gloves, Raydao Gamma Waist, and then the Gore Magala Beta Legs. This gets us the Raydao 2 set bonus, the Gore Magala 2 set bonus, the Lord Soul group bonus, and the Jin Dahaad 2 set bonus as well, which is bonus attack for 90 seconds after recovering from the web status, the frostblight status, pin attacks, or power clash. The only one of these things that will happen frequently if you are playing well, especially for Sword and Shield, is power clashes, but that does have some limitations. Not every monster has a power clash. The list of monsters that do as of this moment, at least to my knowledge, is on screen right now, and it's 11 monsters. That means only around 1/3 of the monsters currently in the game have power clashes, and one of those monsters doesn't even have a high rank version. That being said, for fights that power clash does exist for, we are giving this set bonus an uptime of 20%. This implies that you would get a power clash once every 7.5 minutes or so, which I think is quite a reasonable estimation for how often that happens. I will not be counting it in the initial math so you can see how the build does without power clash monsters, but I will tell you at the end of the math how much it will increase for monsters that do have power clashes as a result. The God Roll Talisman for this build then is 3 offensive guard or Master's Touch in the first skill slot, and then either Agitator 1 or Burst 1 in the armor skill slot, and it should ideally also be a Rarity 8 talisman for the weapon decoration slot as well. For the actual decorations in the build then, 1 Mighty Jewel to cap off maximum might, 3 Counter Jewels to cap off counterstrike, 1 Challenger Jewel which lets us get full Agitator ranks, and then the 1 Chain Jewel for 1 rank of burst, and 2 Sane Jewels for the remaining ranks of antivirus. Full skill list is on screen, relatively comparable to the last one, but it does lose a bit of affinity to be able to gain the extra crit boost from the gain in weapon slot space that we get from using the random talisman. For the math on this one then, 257 attack on the weapon, bumped up to 308.4 from our affinity increasing skills. Add on our flat attack bonuses and we hit 344.9 attack, negative 10% affinity on the weapon itself, bumped up to 81.15% with the rest of affinity skills factored in. This build gets full critical boost, so 40% damage increase on crits, which makes an average damage increase of 32.46%. Apply that to our attack total and you get 456.85, increased by a further 32% for the white sharpness modifier for a final effective raw of 603.1. So only minorly better than the crafted talisman build, but better than that nonetheless. And importantly, for binding counter targets, this will jump up to 611.8 effective raw, which is a much larger jump, even if it is relatively particular about the amount of monsters it actually works for. Then we have our final non-Scorcher build, which is the highest effective raw that you can reach against most monsters, and it uses set and group bonuses on weapon, as well as an RNG talisman, but this time we also require you to have 1-slot sockets from a perfect God Roll talisman as well. So this is the pinnacle RNG build. That said, the armor is the Analytic Eye helmet, the new Udra Gamma chest, the gore Magala beta gloves, and then the Jin Gamma waist, as well as the Blanganga beta pants, which are transcended up for the decoration slots. The talisman for this is going to be 3 offensive guard or Master's Touch for the first skill slot, and then either 1 Agitator or Weakness Exploit or Burst for the armor skill slot. And it needs to have 2 1-slot sockets to be able to fit the full ranks of antivirus in this build, which is why this build has the steepest requirements of anything so far. As for the decorations, 3 Mighty Jewels for full maximum might, 3 Tenderizer Jewels for the remaining ranks of Weakness Exploit, 1 Counter Jewel to cap off counterstrike to 3 ranks, 1 Chain Jewel for the important first rank of burst, and then 3 Sane Jewels for full antivirus. Full skill list for this one on screen. We do get a little bit of extra utility space in this one, but this one weirdly rounds full circle to just having Gore Magala 2-set bonus and Lord Soul group bonus as the only set bonus type stuff inside of it, just because the efficiency of this combo of armor pieces is so high. The math for this one then is 257 attack base on the weapon, bumped up to 308.4 because of our percent increases. We then add on our flat attack bonus skills to hit 344.9. We have negative 10% affinity on the weapon, increased to 84.75% with our affinity based skills included as well. Full critical boost means that critical hits are a 40% damage increase, so that makes an average damage bonus of 33.9%. Apply that to our attack and you get 461.82, increased by a further 32% for the white sharpness damage modifier, and we get a final effective raw of 609.6. What's most interesting about this is that this means it is better than the previous build against the majority of monsters in the game, but ever so slightly worse than the previous build against binding counter matchups, specifically the monsters that have the power clashes. It's like less than 0.5% worse than that specific situation, but it's still worth mentioning that difference so you understand the strengths of each build and when you would use them if you were able to craft all of them. That's our more standard builds covered then, the ones that directly compare to the previous round of Sword and Shield builds. So now let's get into the Scorcher builds, and again, I do recommend these builds over the others if you tend to have slightly longer hunts. The other builds will likely be better for speedrunners or players who play near flawlessly and extremely quickly and have super fast hunts as a result, but these ones with Scorcher will simply increase in value the worse you play, because that's just how Scorcher works. And I'm not telling you you need to think that you're a bad player to use these or something like that, but if you think that your average hunt timer is a little bit longer than normal, then these 100% will be better for you, and that means that they are generally going to be better for every properly difficult fight. That said, our first of these requires set and group bonus from your weapon, but uses a crafted talisman. Armor is Guardian Rathalos beta helmet and gloves transcended up, then new Udra Gamma chest, Raydao Gamma waist, and the Gore Magala beta pants. This gets us the Rathalos 2-set bonus of Scorcher, we get the Gore Magala 2-set bonus, and we also get the Lord Soul group bonus as well. The charm for this is the Challenger charm for 3 ranks of Agitator. Decorations in this build are 2 Challenger jewels for the remaining Agitator ranks, 2 Throttle jewels for some extra latent power, 1 Chain jewel for that first rank of burst, then 1 Mighty jewel to cap off maximum might, and 1 Counter jewel to cap off counterstrike, as well as 2 Sane jewels to finish off antivirus, and then you have 1 extra 1-slot socket for utility. utility. Full skill list on screen. This one is relatively light on utility space, but does have a ton of power behind it. The math for this one nice and quick: 257 attack on the weapon itself, up to 308.4 from percent increases. Add on flat attack bonuses for 341.9 total. For affinity, negative 10% base, increased to 84.75% from our skills. 3 critical boosts, so 34% damage multiplier for crits, which makes an average damage increase of 28.82. Apply that to our attack for 440.42, then increased by 32% for the white sharpness damage modifier for a final effective raw of 581.4. This is about 3.4% lower than the equivalent non-Scorcher build from earlier in this video, so you do have to pay a bit of a price to have Scorcher included for this one, but you'll see this difference go down as we move up the RNG scale, and the Scorcher builds will get closer and closer the more RNG is required. Next up then, we have a build that requires set and group bonus on weapon and requires an RNG talisman, but hits a higher effective raw. This one specifically will be the exact same armor setup as the last build, but with the change to using an RNG talisman and some decoration swap arounds for more efficient skill use and higher affinity as a result. The talisman that you want for this is going to be 3 offensive guard as the first slot, or Master's Touch of course, and then either weakness exploit or agitator or burst in the other skill slot. Ideally it would also be a rarity 8 talisman as well. The decorations for this build then are 1 challenger for a bit of extra agitator, 3 tenderizer for the remaining weakness exploit ranks, 1 chain for the first rank of burst, 1 mighty for maximum might, 1 counter for counterstrike, and the 2 sane jewels for antivirus once again. So again, it's a very similar build, just with a bit more room to focus on crits, which helps even more because it gains 2 crit boost compared to crafted talisman as well. For the math on this one then, 257 attack from the weapon itself, up to 308.4 from percent increases. Add on our flat attack bonuses and we hit 337.1. For affinity, negative 10% as a base, up to 88.25% from our affinity based skills. Full critical boost means that crits are a 40% damage increase, so our average bonus from crits is 35.3%. Apply that to our attack total to get 456.1, increased by a further 32% for the white sharpness modifier, and our final effective raw is 602. The equivalent non-Scorcher set from earlier in the video is actually only 603.1, so it's only 1 effective raw ahead, which is a minuscule amount to make up for from the Scorcher bonus, except that set does also have the Jin Dahaad 2 set bonus, so against power clash monsters it jumps up to being 611.8, which is still only around 1.4% more than this set's effective raw, and that's why I generally believe the Scorcher set here will come out ahead for most players. Then we have our final build here, and this is the pinnacle of RNG for Scorcher setups, so set and group bonus from the weapon included, full RNG talisman including requiring the 1 slot armor skill sockets to be used as well. The armor for this one is the Guardian Rathlos Beta helmet and gloves, the Jin Dahaad Gamma chest and legs, and then the Gore Magala Beta waist. This gets us the Rathlos 2 set bonus, so Scorcher, it gets us the Gore Magala 2 set bonus, and it gets us the Jin Dahaad 2 set bonus again, as well as the Lord Soul group bonus 2. For the talisman then, 3 offensive guard or Master's Touch as the first skill, agitator or weakness exploit as the second skill, and it also needs the armor decoration slots. It needs both of them to exist. The decorations for this one then are going to be 2 challenger jewels to hit the full 5 ranks of agitator, 1 tenderizer jewel for the final rank of weakness exploit, 3 counter jewels for full counterstrike, 3 mighty jewels for full maximum might, and 3 sane jewels for full antivirus. The main thing about this build is that it does not have burst rank 1, which is quite high value, but this mathed better without it, and it mathed better than anything that I could do with it. But it depends on what you believe your counterstrike uptime to be. We can get 1 rank of burst by dropping 1 rank of counterstrike because of the way the decorations work in this build, and that's something that would be worth it if you think counterstrike has less than 33% uptime for you. So if you think that you are hit less than once every 2 minutes and 50 seconds or so, then you would want to switch to burst. If you think you get hit more often than that, then the 3rd rank of counterstrike is better than the 1st rank of burst. That said, for the math on this one then, 257 attack on the weapon itself, up to 308.4% increases. Add on flat attack bonuses to hit 336.9. For affinity, negative 10% boosted up to 84.75% for our skills. Full crit boost is a 40% damage increase, so an average bonus of 33.9% from crits. Apply that to our attack for 451.11, increased by a further 32% for white sharpness modifier for our final effective raw of 595.5. At first glance, you might see this number and think it's lower than the build that we just covered, but has less RNG requirement. So let's account for Jin Dahaad 2 set bonus, which means against power clash monsters, this will bump up to 604.3 effective raw, which is minorly better than than the previous set. So basically, this one is only better than the previous one against power clash targets, and even then only very slightly. So I generally recommend the previous one over this one for general use, but if you have the means to make this one as well, you might as well have both options available and switch based on your target. That said, these last couple of sets have extremely comparable effective raw to the equivalent sets without Scorcher, like literally 1% difference or less, to the point that Scorcher should push them over the edge in most hunts for most players. But giving you all of the different options and explaining the why of it all is the main reason that this video is as long as it is, and why it has 8 builds in it. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it gives you some insight into what you want to do with Sword and Shield and how to take your builds moving forwards, and I'm gonna go have a nap. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.